we live in a world of volatility. These things are creating some shocks that will impact us, but they're not going to throw us off our fundamental growth path.
It's high time Stephen Harper stopped hiding his finance minister, stopped playing peekaboo with the budget date.
Their excuses are the political equivalent of the dog ate my homework.
A steady hand on the tiller or a government adrift. Two very different narratives emerged this week. Opposition parties say the government is mismanaging the economy in turbulent times. But is that really the case? The politicians had their say. Now we'll have ours. Tweet me at AndrewCBC to be part of the conversation. It's time for the Sunday Scrum. Our panelists are ready to pounce. Little alliteration there on a Sunday morning. Susan Riley is a freelance columnist in Ottawa. Next to her there is the CBC's own Rosemary Barton, and Martin Patriquin with Maclean's Magazine joins us from Montreal. Hello to you all.
Morning.
Marty, we haven't seen you in a little while, so why don't we just start with you? So what do you think about that? These two narratives that are emerging, the opposition saying the government's adrift and the government saying, look, these are turbulent economic times.
Yeah, and I said it on a panel earlier, like a couple of weeks ago. I think the fortunes, the electoral fortunes of this government rise and fall with the price of oil to a certain extent. The numbers are so soundbite worthy. You have the Conference Board of Canada saying there's $4.3 billion less in federal coffers because of the reliance on, because of the decrease in the cost of oil, that kind of thing. Whether or not that's true, whether or not Stephen Harper is head of a quote-unquote petrostate is a matter of great debate. I don't think it's particularly true. Andrew Leach, who writes for us at Maclean's, pointed out that Canada's share, the energy share of Canada's GDP has actually decreased under Stephen Harper. The thing is it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. If we continue to lose money because of the price of oil, I think that the argument just sticks more and more for the opposition.
All right, Susan, what do you think?
I think both things are true. I think the government is adrift, and I think what's happening is outside of their control. The reason I say that is because I was just stunned at Prime Minister Harper's comments this week. After years almost of overstating the importance of oil to our economy, all of a sudden he's saying, we mustn't overstate the importance of oil to our economy. I mean, where is he? After years, by the way, of I'm not going to say ignoring, but certainly not focusing on what happened to the manufacturing sector, the collapse of manufacturing or the partial collapse of manufacturing in Ontario, all of a sudden. Or blaming it on the Ontario government, all of a sudden he's concerned about his government is concerned about manufacturing in Ontario, and they're announcing various small measures to boost that.
So let's go ahead.
That's either admirably flexible or wildly inconsistent.
So just before Rosie, I ask you what you think. We put together some numbers so that people can sort of make their own assessment about all of this. So let's take a quick look at how important the energy sector is to the Canadian economy. These numbers are from 2013. Natural Resources Canada, 27% of total public and private investments in Canada were in the energy sector. The largest share of government revenues, it doesn't mean the majority, but the largest share of government revenues from one area does come from the oil and gas industry, roughly $23 billion between 2008 and 2013. I think that's about a $300 billion budget. Rosie, correct me if I'm wrong. Oil and gas companies account for roughly a third of the value of the Toronto Stock Exchange. So those are just some of those numbers. So Rosie, how fair, or why don't you give us an analysis of how the opposition is responding to what the government is saying to this?
Let me throw one more number at you, because I did reread this speech from the Bank of Canada from about 10 days ago, where they actually said, it wasn't the governor, it was another person at the Bank of Canada who said that the gross domestic product, of Canada's gross domestic product, the oil sector actually represents 3%. Okay, so that's not actually a hugely significant number. So then you have to wonder, then why are we in this bind? So I think we're in this bind for a few reasons. I mean, obviously the government couldn't predict the sudden decline of oil to this extent, right? The last time they updated us on the state of the Canadian economy, it was back in November. Oil was at $80. They certainly didn't know it was going to go this low. The Bank of Canada also thinks that oil will go back up, as do most economists, right? That's sort of what oil does. So do they have to panic? Probably not. But where the opposition can push back, and I think where they're going to push back this week, starting tomorrow, tomorrow, is by saying, you didn't have to promise to do billions of dollars in income splitting and childcare tax benefits before the budget. You didn't have to do that. They did that for pure electoral reasons,
of course,
because they wanted to fulfill a promise. And now they're stuck because oil has gone down, it's collapsed. We don't know what kind of surplus they're going to have, if any. And for now, there seems no indication that the government wants to give up on these promises. So they sort of painted themselves into a corner and now have very little control over what to do. The only thing that they could do, and Marty talked about it on Friday too, is undo some of those promises. And I don't see that happening.
Because they've said that basically they are going to balance this budget come hell or high water. That's essentially what the government is saying about that, right, Mark?
Yeah, exactly. And, between those two, between the child care tax credit and income splitting, and I said it on Friday, and, there are certain boundaries preventing them from doing it markedly that income splitting is on the tax forms apparently already. That said, I think it's more politically palpable to cut that one than the child care. People that benefit from this are probably going to be voting Harper anyway. It doesn't have unanimity within the Conservative caucus, and it's $3.5 billion according to TD Bank. That almost makes up for the loss of give or take $1 billion of the amount that we've lost from oil.
I agree.
Susan,
Income splitting for rich people was a hard sell before oil prices tanked, and it's virtually an impossible sell now. Yes, it may be already inscribed on the tax forms. Certain people are going to be eagerly awaiting it. People talk about the political penalty if the government suddenly pulls this treat away from people. My guess is they're going to be in a lot more trouble from a lot more people, i.e., the 80+% who aren't benefiting from this, if they proceed with this in these times.
Rosie,
so I still think the calculation, I still think they should get rid of it.
Rosie, let me ask you this. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, but I know that Justin Trudeau has not said whether or not he would, if he were in the government, whether or not there would be a deficit in order to, whether he would allow the budget to go into deficit. I'm pretty sure about that. What about Tom Mulcair? Has he been clear on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure anyone's asked him the question point blank. I don't think anyone right now is going to say, yes, that's a good idea.
Right.
I mean, that's just not the way they're going to go. What they will do, though, over the course of the next few weeks is make this about the stark choices, right? They'll say, this government wanted to offer income splitting to X number of Canadians, and instead, these are the things that we're going to do. So Tom Mulcair will talk about the daycare choice. He'll talk about federal minimum wage, even though it's only a small number of people. The NDP will probably talk about increasing corporate taxes, which is how they would get some money back into the coffers. And Justin Trudeau will promote, infrastructure, education, innovation, sort of large themes, because we don't have a lot of specifics from them. But it'll be about it'll be about stark choices, and they'll try and say that the government is doing things for, as Susan said, rich people. In fact, the government says that it's a package of things. Income splitting is part of it, but that universal child care tax benefit will go to every Canadian who has a child. And that's what allows them to say that it helps all Canadians. And that's why I don't think they're going to touch the package at all.
Yeah, but you can split the package.
But
I don't see it happening.
But just on the childcare, I think that's it's popular amongst Conservatives. It's popular amongst the opposition as well. I think that one is pretty much died and cast. I think just because given the popularity right across the board.
I think Trudeau looked terrible this week on the economy. By contrast, Mr. Mulcair is putting forward ideas. One of them that Rosie didn't mention is he would restore $115 million annually funding for the CBC. Which is...
I don't advertise that stuff.
No, she didn't want to look too happy about that.
Yeah. Leave it to the freelancer.
I think personally, as a consumer, I mean, it sounds self-interested, but I think that's a good idea. I think that'll catch a lot of people's attention. On the other hand, Trudeau is almost laughably vague about various things, and this week I think made a very major blunder that's tangentially related to the economy. He basically said that his federal government would not regulate greenhouse gas emissions. They would essentially
leave it up to the provinces.
They would punt it to the provinces. That is a shocking departure from what he's been saying all along about carbon pricing. In my view, I think it opens a real opportunity for the NDP and the Green Party, for Green voters who might have been hoping that Trudeau's sunny ways translated into an actual, real or a serious approach to climate change. He just looks like Stephen Harper in his policy announcement. I'd be interested.
The interesting thing about that, and it's a good point. You know, I have a feeling that he's saying that for the exact same reason that he supported Keystone. It's to get votes in the West.
Yeah.
All right. More to come. I'm going to let Rosie and I get out of this whole CBC funding thing. More to come on the Sunday Scrum. Monday is back to work day for the politicians on Parliament Hill. We'll take a look at what to expect for the session ahead. That's coming up.